All right, so I'm making a video on codependency based on the research that I've discovered and what I've learned about it. Doing this because if you're interested on what codependency is, if you find that you are codependent and the stages of getting free of that are, and also if you know somebody that's codependent, how you can be there for them, how you can support them and what they're going through. So that's my motivation for this. So let's talk about what codependency is. Um, from my research, codependency is defined as an individual disorder that is expressed in relationships. It's not a personality type. You're not going to find, it's not like extroverts or introverts are necessarily codependent. Anybody can be codependent. This is something that is expressed in relationships. I find a lot of comparisons to codependency as with other addictions, like alcoholism. An alcoholic, you can't tell by their personality if they're an alcoholic or not. It's a behavior that's expressed in different forms, and I think that goes a lot with codependency. So it's defined in relationships with what you do and don't do. What is a codependent? And to see if this fits you or somebody else codependents are hyper focused on giving love, respect, and care freely to others, freely and abundantly to others, but they undervalue or dismiss or do not demand the same from others. So they're giving a lot and they don't feel that they're getting the return, or they're not getting the return. So that's what a codependent is. And what happens is they want an equal distribution of love, respect, and care, but they don't know how to get it. They find relationships with narcissists who do not give the unconditional love, respect, and care back to them. So codependents tend to find narcissists that kind of fit the puzzle piece of the two, where the codependent's giving a lot and the narcissist is taking a lot. Codependents resent the narcissist but maintain the relationship. So they give, and then they start resenting the person they're giving it to because they're not getting the same in return. I found codependence to be broken down into two different categories. There's active codependence, and they pursue the narcissist and the addict. They're the ones actually pursuing. They're the ones that are more attracted to alcoholics, drug addicts, sex addicts, and stuff like that. That's an active codependent. And then we've got the passive codependents, and they just kind of go along with the flow. They just let things happen to them, and they're not basically they're not actively pursuing these things. Both of them freely and abundantly give love, respect, and care to others while not getting the same in return. That's the common thread with what a codependent is. So that's the definition, but I like to try to figure out, okay, great, so what do we do with that? We got a problem, how do we fix it? So I found that there are 4 stages in the recovery of being a codependent. I will spend most of the time talking about the first stage. The first stage is the most difficult stage by far. It starts, just that 0 day, the first day is when you decide to start your recovery, and it can last, on average, what I'm finding is about 3 months. It could be shorter, could be longer, but this is kind of the average situation with stage 1. And stage 1 is setting boundaries. Setting boundaries on what you're willing to accept from others, what you're willing to give to others. So putting boundaries so that you're not getting completely walked over all the time. So the codependent will likely be very scared starting stage 1 and actually throughout all of stage 1, because a lot of codependents have gone their entire life worried about what would happen if they set boundaries around other people. So when you start this recovery, it's going to be very scary and very new. Many have never set boundaries with loved ones, friends, or neighbors or colleagues. They've never set the boundaries. They're constantly just giving, 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 and pleasing everybody around them, and not setting the boundaries because they want to be loved and respected, and they want this. But what ends up happening is they give so much that they don't really feel that they're getting it back. So, so setting boundaries for the first time with people that are narcissistic is extremely scary. And the truth is, a narcissist is going to be extremely angry and will experience these boundaries as an attack upon them. So, for instance, if you start to set boundaries to the narcissist where everything's wrapped around the narcissist is going to lash out. It's going to be very threatening to them, and you're going to get attacked, which makes this all the more difficult to start the process of breaking codependency. The boundaries represent an end to the relationship's dysfunctional dance. So putting those boundaries down is actually a very good, healthy thing for you to do, because you're in a dysfunctional relationship, and this is the sign, this is the chance to break that dysfunctional relationship. The narcissist tends not to have the ability to accept fault for the problems. They tend to get very angry, they feel betrayed, and they blame the codependent. The narcissist cannot see what's wrong with them, but they can always see what's wrong with other people. So this is a very difficult, person to be around, or people. When you're codependent, you're surrounded by lots of people, and you're doing this to everybody. And the narcissists are very difficult to deal with, especially because you're starting this stage, and then the narcissists just make it all the worse because it's about them, and no real consideration towards you. So setting boundaries is something you would not normally do. For instance, like going to the movies with your friends. Go to the movies with your friends, you tell your partner, watch the kids, I'm going to go to the movies tonight. It's not something you normally do as a codependent, or I keep saying defendant, as a co-dependent, because you're more worried about the feelings of your partner. You're more worried about the feelings of the narcissist, so you don't do these things. Doing something like this is starting to set the boundaries. So you don't have to start huge. You can start small. You start to set boundaries like, no, I'm going to go out with my friends. There's nothing wrong with that. The narcissist will always be very angry. It could be overt or covert emotional manipulation. This is very scary for the codependent because they have never experienced safety when speaking their truth. They don't say their truth a lot, and when they do, they kind of get a backlash because of the way things are going, the way the pattern of the relationships are, and so they get that backlash, and so they've never experienced safety. So this is why, like I said, stage 1, setting boundaries, is so difficult. The aggression from the narcissist is something that the dependent has avoided their whole life. They do not want that aggression. They do not want that conflict. And so they avoid it, and they just kind of keep being peacekeepers, if you will. So before you start stage 1, you should be prepared for immediate loss of friendships and relationships. And I know that sounds horrible, but this is a path to a better life, a better you, a happier situation. But you have to be in for the reality that when you start to set those boundaries, the people that do not want the boundaries, the people that have taken advantage of this situation, you might lose them. You might lose them. You might lose friendships. You might lose relationships. All the people you love are going to be angry. All of them. If you set these boundaries with everybody, everybody's going to be angry at you. Example, your children will be enraged. You will tell them to put down their phone and come to dinner or study. The very first time you set a boundary, they will treat you like you're a stranger. They will look at you with anger. Immediately, you will feel like the world is going to explode. So it's all the different relationships that this will happen in. And people will get angry when you start to set boundaries because they've never experienced a relationship with you with those boundaries. We don't know if these relationships will be reconciled later, but it's important to prepare for that. it's important to understand that these relationships may not come back. If you worry about the relationship being lost in stage 1, it counteracts all the importance of the process and tasks it takes during this stage. So you can't worry about those relationships. You have to say this is what the right thing is, and you have to do it. You got to heal yourself. During stage 1, don't cave in. Once you set boundaries, you're going to be hit full force with the threats, manipulations from the narcissist in your life, wanting you to be the co-dependent and return to the way life used to be. So you're going to get bombarded with manipulations, guilt trips, everything that's going to get thrown at you, because the narcissist is going to feel like they're losing everything that they have, all this security, all the safety of you basically doing everything for them. So be ready for that. You have to be ready for these things before you can start stage 1. You can't, otherwise it's going to blindside you, and it'll be very, very difficult to make it through this. So when you start stage 1, it's very important you're prepared to feel self-doubt and second guessing. You'll feel isolated during stage 1. You'll feel alone. It'll be lonely. Friends and loved ones, people you set boundaries with, will be very angry and resentful. Be prepared to hear criticism and condemnation. Be prepared to hear accusations of being selfish, and expect guilt trips. And that one there is the saddest, in my opinion, because a codependent person gives their whole life to others. For their whole life, they're constantly there for others. They're constantly giving to others, and it makes them resentful. But they're the giving person. They give and give and give and give, and then when they finally set boundaries, when they finally do something for themselves, they're going to hear accusations that they're selfish and get guilt trips. And that is just for some small boundaries. And that's the saddest part. But you have to be ready for it. And like I said, I'm making this video also, so if you know someone that's codependent and you're going to try to help them through this process, be aware of that too. Don't make them feel selfish. Don't give them guilt trips. You're helping them become a better person. So anyways, that's a huge one for stage 1. Now, remember, stage 1 is going to hurt. It's going to be very difficult, but on average, it lasts around 3 months. It could last a lot longer, and it could be shorter. Like I say, every situation's unique. This is just a overview of the stages and kind of a trend of things. But obviously, every situation is unique in every person. So it only lasts about 3 months. And if you're seeing a therapist, the therapist's goal, getting you ready for stage 1 and keeping you in stage 1, is to keep you strong, motivated, and focused. You don't necessarily have to have a therapist to go through this, but my research is what therapists are going to do for you when you're going through these stages. So having support with a therapist is a very good idea. And if you understand what you need to do, you can talk to the therapist about what's going on. You can talk to them about, I felt selfish, or or let's see what else. You could say, I felt selfish, I feel isolated, I feel alone. These kind of things that you're feeling, you could bring to the therapist, and the therapist can help with those things, because, this is literally right from the textbooks on how to deal with codependency. All right, we've made it through stage 1. Let's go to stage 2. Now, stage 2 is still very difficult, but the intensity of the conflicts will die down a few notches. So it's going to start getting a little bit easier. It's not going to be perfect by any means. It's still hard, but it's not going to be nearly as hard as stage 1. Stage 1 is just breaking the mold of something you've never done before. You've already set the important boundaries and the things that you will and won't do. So during stage 1, this is the difference, how you know if you're in stage 1 or stage 2. You've already set the boundaries of what you will and won't do. You've got boundaries in place. You might have spent 2 or 3 months with people being very angry with you, manipulating you to come back to your codependent ways. But you've stayed strong. You didn't. You believe that you deserve to be loved and cared for in an equal proportion with others. So this is where you're at. If these things fit, you've made it to stage 2. Sadly, in stage 2, people that don't love you will start to go away. This could be your spouse, it could be family members, people you've known your whole life. These narcissists will say like, well, this isn't a relationship that works for me anymore, and you might lose some of those relationships in stage 2. So that's why stage 2, like I said, it's going to be difficult, but you're prepared. You know that this could possibly happen, and it might surprise you which people do leave. The difficulty comes when the recovering codependent realizes that the relationships that they thought were important to them were only as good as their ability to take care of them. So this is the sad part in stage 2, is these relationships you thought were so great, so strong, you realize the only reason they were held together was because of all the work that you were putting in there. It was not mutual. This is when the narcissist cannot tolerate the relationship, and that is balanced to some degree on mutuality, and the narcissist goes away. During stage 2, you're going to have to deal with grief of those people that go away. You're going to have to deal with possibly a best friend that walks away, while accusing the recovering codependent of being unreasonable and selfish. And that is very, very sad. And my heart goes out to you if that happens. Because, like I said, the codependent has given everything. And then when they stand up for themselves, it's like people are like, well, screw that. And it's just very sad. And that's also strong evidence that you were in a dysfunctional relationship with that person. Withdrawal symptoms still exist, but they are not as bad as stage 1. You're getting stronger. You're doing the right thing, but it's still not necessarily going to be easy. During stage 2, you should start identifying healthy versus narcissistic relationships. You're going to start learning. It's not just setting the boundaries. Now you start learning as you're communicating with people, as you're interacting with people, like this is a narcissistic relationship and this is a healthy relationship. So you're going to start learning in stage 2. This is a key of getting out of stage 2. You'll start to learn and analyze your different relationships. It is not an all or nothing at this point to rid yourself of our narcissists in your life. In this stage, you'll learn what is acceptable and fair and mutual in your relationships. You're going to learn how much empathy are you willing to give up. The recovering codependent starts to learn to predict guilt trips, shaming, and anger. They gain confidence and boundaries and are not afraid of confrontation. And that's a really important one. During stage 2, you'll start to learn to predict the guilt trips, start to learn to predict the shaming, start to learn to predict the anger. You'll start to instead of blaming yourself on all these things, you'll start to see it coming, and that's very, very beautiful. That's going to make you really strong and a much better person, and this will kind of grow as we go through these stages. During stage 2, you will start to learn to combat negative self-talk of feeling selfish or unfair. The codependent will often not take care of themselves because they feel selfish. They feel it's unfair. They feel guilty about it. And there's a self-talk. You have your inner voice that will be reinforcing that constantly. It's being reinforced your whole life. And you have to start combating that. You have to start paying attention to it and breaking that inner voice. Breaking that self-talk is a sign that you're getting out of stage 2. During stage 2, you should start to build a support network, such as, well, we'll talk about that in a moment. So you got to get some people behind you. Codependents have been literally alone around their whole life and around other people because they're always trying to people please and they're not being themselves, and they feel very, very lonely. That's why a support network is going to be very important to realize that you're not alone. It is this fear that ties the codependent to their behavior, which creates relationships that are harmful to them. A therapist alone is not enough to get you through stage 2. You're going to need a support network. It could be support groups. You could join things like Al-Anon. You could join church groups. And I'm sure that there's other groups that are, codependent, recovering codependents, or people going in the process. You could talk to people like that as well. But this is a key to recovery. You need a support group that's going to help you, because you need that strength. And like I said, just therapy is not enough for that. All right, if that happened, you figured out how to set your boundaries, you've got from stage 1 to 2, you've stopped your self-talk, you have identified narcissistic versus healthy relationships, then congratulations, you've made it to stage 3. In stage 3, this is a complete dissolution of the former codependent and narcissistic relationship experience. So to get through stage 3, the codependent no longer feels like the codependent no longer feels like a codependent. So when you get to stage 3, you don't feel like you're codependent anymore. You're starting to say you're not in relationships that's a codependent narcissistic relationship. You're starting to get into healthy relationships. You no longer accept others expecting more from you than you're willing to return. In stage 3, you start to reach out to those that have survived the first 2 stages with you and start a new type of relationship, a reconfigured relationship with those people. So the people that made it through there, now you're starting to build a new relationship with them. So in stage 3, the relationships start to morph into a more healthy structure. Family members start to get over what they used to think as selfish or unfair behavior. Some of the people that threatened to leave the codependent during stage 1 may return. The narcissists that return learn to respect boundaries and show that you are more important to them than not with them. So you start to get control of things, and things are starting to turn a little bit better. People are starting to respect you and not use you. During stage 3, this might be the first time the recovering codependent has experienced mutuality and healthy relationships. So when you get here, you might actually see what a healthy relationship feels like and looks like. Just like the codependent is drawn to the narcissist, healthy people are drawn to each other as well. When the narcissists reappear, the recovering codependent is not drawn in. They can spot the manipulation, and they set boundaries. They're able to remove themselves from the situation. So they're turned off by narcissists, and they don't get drawn into it anymore. If you've been able to do this, if you're able to identify narcissism, you don't think you're a codependent anymore, and you're not putting up with it, you're taking care of yourself, then congratulations, you made it through stage 3. See, things are getting better. And look at that. Stage 3 sometimes happens between 6 months to a year. So if you've lived your whole life with this pain, on average, it takes about a year, and people start to break it. They become a normal, I should say normal, let's use that one. They become a healthy person. And, it can happen for you in a year. All right. The last stage, stage 4, after the year, for the rest of your life, your caretaking, your codependency ceases. So you got out of stage 3. There is no more codependency. You're not pathologically caretaking of people. You have mutual relationships with love, respect, and care. This doesn't mean that they're always equal. It means that it's a healthy balance. Yes, some people give more than others, and that's okay, but it's a healthy balance. It's a balance is acceptable to you, and it's not making you resentful. It's not making you angry, because why? You're not a codependent. Relationships will have interdependence, having their own individuality, but being connected to a relationship. And I kind of like to think about that as like two trees that are kind of grown and intertwined. It's a relationship, but they're independent of each other. They're two different organisms, but they have that relationship towards each other. They're not hurting each other. One's not leaning on the other one. One's not killing the other one, but they are two making a strong relationship. Unlike stage one, loved ones will start to admire and affirm your growth and change. So this is really nice. Once you get to stage four, loved ones will respect you because you're standing up for what you need, what you want, and people are listening and people are going to be drawn in towards you. You are now immediately turned off by narcissists and turned on to healthy prospective partners. So in stage four, you see a narcissist coming and you're able to spot it and hit the curb. My life's too good to be in a situation like this. This is when the love we dreamed of can happen. No more cellmates, just a soulmate. I wish you luck on your journey and all the support you need. Thank you.